Welcome to The Way Forward, the podcast that dives deep into how technology shapes our health and well-being. From digital wellness to tech innovation to the effects of electromagnetic fields, we cover the environmental, social, and physical implications of technology. Ready to navigate the digital landscape with confidence? Set your dial to discovery and tune in. You're listening to The Way Forward. Dr. Leila Doolittle, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me on. I love what you're doing in this world.
I'm so excited to hear your explanation of how EMFs are impacting us, just because I feel like you just laid it out so well. I mean, we talk to a lot of different people, and some people have the knowledge, but they struggle to communicate it. That's me, because I don't have the medical background. I don't have the scientific background. And so when I came into EMF and really started like the aha moment when I started really realizing that it's an issue, it was more of an intuitive thing. Like when I became a mother, It was something that I just intuitively felt was not good and that needed attention. And, then as time went on, I started educating more and more. And I'm one of those people that it's like, I'll educate myself on something, but as soon as I decide in my heart that I know which direction that I need to go, I kind of forget the information. Like it just kind of leaves. It's like, I know that this is what I need to do. And I know but I struggle to communicate. So anyway, that's what we're going to get into today. But I want to start with a little bit about you first and your practice and how you kind of came to where you are now.
Sure. Well, I love sharing about this. And it is interesting what you said about, whenever you became a mother and you're protecting, we oftentimes will think about many other people outside of ourselves first, and then we put ourselves last. And so that is so important that you're able to, for your child, protect your child. And in doing so, you're also protecting yourself. You're protecting that inner self that needs to, be able to have like the healthy frequencies surrounding constantly. Yeah. So for me, it was my own history with health concerns starting whenever I was a teen and I was exposed to black mold in one of the homes that we moved into. And with that, of course, I believe that there is such a connection between the mold and the EMF sensitivities, as well as sensitivities to different foods, microbiome disruption. There was just a cascade that I was able to experience firsthand as a teenager. And that was what kickstarted me into this journey of functional medicine practitioner. So I started chasing down the information to help heal myself. Yeah. And that was the long journey through pre-med and then studying deeply into biochemical processes and genetics and how epigenetics affect us and how much sensitivities and susceptibilities we have just there waiting for us in our blueprint. And then function is further either altered and either optimized, or it can cause more sensitivities if we have that sitting in our genetics. And so that's what I experienced. And EMFs was always like a theme throughout each of my different types of health concerns. And so for me, I was fascinated with studying what is it about these types of frequencies that are unnatural to us, because of course we have the natural EMF frequencies from the earth that are good frequencies from nature that we can handle because our bodies have evolved with nature. And then there's a difference between all these man-made types of EMF frequencies that are just toxic to our system. It's overwhelming to our system. And so functional neurology was a big part of my health journey, as I also had a concussion from a bad car accident that added to my level of like complexities with my own health concerns. And with functional neurology, of course, I'm just fascinated in understanding every single thing about the electrical, biochemical processes of this, and just understanding how our own communication signals can't be altered by EMF type frequencies or by other things that create sensitivities within us. And so, it's been a long journey.
Wow.
of me studying many different angles.
Okay, so going back, I love what you were saying, because I think I kind of opened my eyes to the mold concern through interviewing people, because it seemed like everybody who kind of had that aha moment with EMF had experienced some kind of mold toxicity, or they experienced mold toxicity, which led them to start having symptoms that led them to discover that they have Lyme. It seemed to be that mold and EMF really connected on a deep level.
So frequently.
And so it's wild to see that it's always kind of like a string that is
Mhm.
connected that really
It
starts
is.
waking people up because mold, I've experienced mold, my family's experienced mold, and it was one of those things where it's just like EMF, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind.
Yes.
And it's
Right.
really hard to take seriously when it's not
Hmm.
like super present. Like you don't know exactly where it's coming from, or even if you do know it's there, it's just hard to wrap your head around the fact that something
Yes.
like that could be impacting you on such a deep level.
Hmm.
And it really is, even on that level, so similar to EMF because it's so out of sight, out of mind. Like I've been
Right.
on my health journey since I was 17 years old. Like
Wow.
when I had a chronic sinus infection that they kept giving
Hmm.
me antibiotics after antibiotics, steroids. We did surgery. We did all these things, and nothing was happening. So that's
Hmm.
kind of when I shifted. Was like, okay, let me cut out sugar and alcohol and all these things that
Yeah.
I was enjoying at that age, of my life,
Yes.
and saw a huge impact. Um, but yeah, just even then, the EMF thing is like I would hear about it, but it was just so out of sight
Right.
and it was just so easy to ignore. And then when my son was born, he had something called jejunal atresia, which I'm sure you know what
Oh.
that is, but he had
Hmm.
no internal intestine, so or no middle, so he had an upper and a
Hmm.
lower.
Wow.
And I just remember the surgeon telling me, you know, um, we don't really know how this just happens. It just happens in the first couple weeks of gestation,
Hmm.
and we don't really know. And I just wasn't satisfied with that answer
Right.
because I'm like,
Yeah.
everything is connected, And I don't mean that from a space of
Yes.
shame or guilt or anything like that. I know there's complexities with, accidents happening and things happening. But as a mother, I was like, no, I need to know, where was I in the first couple weeks of gestation? What was happening? And that's
Mm.
what opened my eyes to EMF because I
Wow.
was at the time of like the first couple weeks of my gestation, I was living in a 200 to 300 square foot little cabin that had the Wi-Fi plugged into the bedroom.
Oh no.
And so I'll never be able
Mm.
to prove that that's what it was, but it opened my eyes to there's these
Hmm.
frequencies that are,
Yeah.
all around us all the time.
Yes, yes, they are their surroundings. And then if there were more layers, like maybe there was some mold exposure, your toxic burden bucket was filled with other environmental toxins. There were other types of health issues that were making it where your systems weren't able to keep up with those toxins. And of course, yeah, it definitely could have led to many of those
So can
issues
you
and concerns.
explain a little bit about like toxic overload? Because it
Yeah.
almost, when people have that experience, it almost makes them seem like a hypochondriac or something where it's like there's so many things that come up at once. They're diagnosed with so many things
Yes.
at once. Can you talk a
Sure.
little bit about like the medical or physical side of like what is actually happening in the body and why does everything kind of reveal itself all at once?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. We reference it as a toxic burden bucket, and there's just so many things that can fit into that toxic burden bucket before we hit our threshold. And it's a way of referencing how much your detoxification systems are able to keep up with, how open your drainage pathways are, ready to release and get rid of the toxins. We all have toxins coming into us from the air, the water, the food, that it's just surrounding us constantly. And we have to be able to keep up with the toxins to live in a healthy way with as many toxins as are in this world because of all the man-made chemicals, industrial revolution, everything else.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we see that that toxic burden bucket just starts getting filled up throughout life. And typically it's like stressors or some sort of like mental or emotional type of trauma or something else that just like creates less of that resilience. Or we just have like the maximum amount that the detox pathways were able to keep up with. Lymphatic system gets clogged, start shutting down. We start getting like very toxic throughout our organ systems. And then it denatures the normal function to where we're no longer able to keep up with whatever was in that bucket. And so it's like the bucket is a certain size and it can be different for different people. I have some patients come in and they'll say, I don't understand why, but my husband can eat whatever and he's perfectly fine. He has no issues at all. And then it's like, I have to eat the super restrictive diet. I'm like super clean about everything. I'm careful about any toxins in my house and whatever.
Yeah.
And I still like have multiple chemical sensitivity. If I smell a fragrance that somebody has plugged in their glade, then I'm over the top. And it's those buckets can be altered as far as like the size based on how well our detoxification pathways are working. So I've seen it with my background in epigenetics and the nutrigenomics and such. That's where I see it. typically because of that blueprint and how our epigenetics are expressing and whether or not we're leaning into proper function of those epigenetics, like really dimming the light switch down if it's altering function negatively, or putting it up to maximal brightness if it's a function that we definitely need and want to
Mm-hmm.
support. And so that can change that size of that bucket or how much we have capacity for. And then the other thing that affects it is that resilience. And so that resilience gets altered oftentimes by those big stressors or just not being in alignment with what it is that's going to help refuel us, refuel our system to help us show up at better capacity.
Quick break in the episode, you guys, because I got to tell you about the amazing sponsor, Aries Tech. Aries Tech creates cream of the crop, top of the line EMF protection devices that do not interfere with your signal, but all of their technology is actually backed by peer-reviewed, patent, and published research that has been going on for almost 20 years. They were originally funded a couple decades ago by the military to create a medical device that would help protect men and women who are working on radio signal towers without interfering with the signal, and have since become a consumer product as we have become more of a technological world. They're also used by professional athletes like Tiki Barber from the NFL Giants and Macy Barber from the UFC for performance optimization tools. You can go to their website, ariestech.com, and check out some really amazing studies where they've done some EEGs to show how these devices are affecting your baseline brain activity. It's really, really cool. I personally have one on me right now near me because I have my phone, my computer, my camera, everything going on all at once in an office building where everyone has their own Wi-Fi. So I don't mess around. Check them out, ariestech.com. Use code INTUNE, INTUNE, TUNE 30 for 30% off your entire order. So if someone comes in and they're saying or they come to you and they say I can feel my phone when it's over there, or, they're starting to have really deep, intense sensitivities to EMF.
Yes.
Would that mean their bucket is full?
Yes. Typically, that means there are many things in that toxic burden bucket that are also interacting with and causing a greater sensitivity to EMS. And mold is definitely correlated. Lyme disease is also very correlated that I've seen in my practice. And there are a couple of other types of toxins like radon and heavy metals and some of those types of things where it's almost like antennas. And that amplifies it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because I did start getting into the mold stuff, and we've had some mold experts on, and they were talking about some research that indicates that mold can grow, I don't know what it was, like 600 times faster or something wild in the presence of certain EMF frequencies.
Yes.
So if you have mold in your body and
Yes.
then you have these outside communications, which basically is just the mold is just fighting. It's like it's getting these outside signals, right? And then it's just responding and replicating in order to survive.
Yes. Because
so
it's also under the same EMF intensity that we are.
But I haven't thought about the metals and them being like antennas in the body.
Yes.
That is interesting.
So that's like the conductivity aspect. And then we take it a step further, and it's interesting because spirochetes, or like corkscrew structure of say lime, certain types of species of lime, that's where it actually can create a spiral and amplification of these types of frequencies. So really complex thing is whenever someone comes in and they have heavy metal toxicity, so now we have greater conductivity of these electrical frequencies, and then we have the amplification of the frequencies due to the lime, creating this spiral type of this corkscrew structure of amplification of the response. And then of course the immunosuppression that could come from mold toxicity, because it directly compromises the immune system being able to differentiate into certain types of just the way that we create cells that we need, the certain type of progenitor cells created into the types of the immune cells that we have to have. Now we've created this perfect response to where we have a really complicated time whenever we have EMF exposures.
That's so interesting. Okay, so really quick, because I still don't feel like I have a really good explanation for how the body functions in this way. But when you say immunosuppressant or suppressed, does that mean that, because something that I kind of realized, when we left the molds, there was a short period of time which we all got really sick.
Mhm.
So it was as if the immune system kick-started again. But like,
Yeah.
can you explain like the immunosuppressed thing
Mhm.
and what happens to the
Yeah.
body?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. There are a couple of different areas within our system that has to respond in conjunction with each other to have adequate immune system function. And we know like white blood cells produced in bone marrow, and then we have differentiation that can happen in the thymus. We have different response patterns where we have like flags and tags from the antibody response to antigens. And so we have this entire very interesting coordinated way of having our immune system respond to external things that it needs to respond to, including the biotoxins such as mold, Lyme, bacteria, viruses, fungal overgrowth, candida, etc. And whenever we have coordination, then great, that's working well. And one interesting level to add in is from a functional neurology standpoint of the cerebellum. Cerebellum is a structure in the back of the brain that has the function is to deal with coordination of motor movement, of sensory function. It also deals with coordination of immune system, and it supports with T helper cells and T regulatory cells to help balance out the immune system. We have Th1 part of the immune system and Th2, and it's important that your system is leaning into like either a natural killer cell response that's responding and providing defense against
Okay.
biotoxins, or we have this other side that's supposed to keep us from having sensitivities, keep us from having allergies, food sensitivities, allergies to pollens and trees and things. And then also we need to make sure that that's in the right balance so that we don't create autoimmunities where immune system starts attacking self tissue, attacking our own structures, our own systems. And so that's such an important component for immune system balancing. So functional neurology plays a role in also the thymus differentiation of immune cells, and also spleen and the bone marrow and everything else that plays a role in these white blood cells and in our immune system creating the defense patterns.
I love how everything is so connected when you're
It is.
talking because it is. And it's,
Absolutely.
that's such the sad part about our, I don't want to talk too negatively about it or anything, but that is the sad part about our current medical system is that
Yes.
you go see a heart doctor for your heart and then you go see different doctor for your teeth and you go
Hmm.
see a different doctor for your sinuses and you have all of these
Right.
different people you're seeing who are only focused on that one part of the body and not
Yes.
seeing the connection between all of it.
Exactly.
So one question I had, because I think you
Mm.
talked about, and I may say this the word wrong, but fat is it fascia?
Yes.
Okay,
Fascia.
so
Yeah.
I
Very important.
don't know much about that. And I feel like our
Mm.
audience probably would be, this is a new concept too, but
Yeah.
what is that and how does it play into kind of like our overall function?
It's a very important component of everything in our body. Fascia is like the plasticky substance that runs around through the body, around each of the organ systems, cradling them, keeping them in the right place, and then also providing like structure and support so that the serum and the extracellular matrix and all the fluid that flows around that is carrying all these different ingredients, it's able to go to wherever it needs to. And this is part of like what creates structure. It's also the fascia inserts onto certain joint spaces, and it can go around all the muscles. Like we see this whenever we're cutting meat, and you know how you cut off like certain parts of like
Yeah.
that fascia.
Uh huh.
That's what you're cutting. Like say chicken, that's the easiest way. Have a chicken breast and you're cutting around it and you pull off that plasticky substance. Well, that's what's getting exposed to the muscle and under. And
Okay.
so in our own systems, our fascia carries tension that can be caused by traumas over time and stressors. If we're constantly in a position or a posture that is creating this chronic hypertonicity and this like fascial response of like forward and anterior, and we're not
Mm-hmm.
able to create that opening and that healthier posture that stretches the fascia back out, then that's where we can create a lot of the effects and impacts to how freely the lymphatic system can move, which is supposed to carry out toxins from our system within the fluid. It's able to pick up from wherever around the organ systems or wherever in the rest of the body that those toxins can be stored. pull it in and then move it through the lymph nodes. And then the immune system is supposed to react to those toxins, start killing off the biotoxins that get processed through or brought through. And then that flushes and clears into our kidney system and clears out through urination, through bowel movements. So that's what would be a normal process. When fascia gets tight and constricted, as often does in our society over time, with as crazy as our lives are now, and just the rush and the bustle, and just not being able to move as much as we need to stretch the fascia back out and make sure that we're caring for it, then that's where we see like effects that can actually impact every single organ function and lead to chronic types of toxicities. And then where EMFs play a big role in this is because we have receptor sites on every single cell in our body. These receptor sites are shaped in specific ways for specific communication signals to come into them, whether it's hormones or neurotransmitters or different types of proteins or things that can create a response within that cell to create function. Whatever those receptor sites are destined for, it's important that those cells are able to receive the signals and the information well. What can oftentimes get clogged is whenever there's toxins, then those receptor sites will actually get blocked by toxins, and it affects the fluidity within the movement within the membrane of the cells. So we have like these phospholipid bilayer membranes is what they're referenced as. And it just means it's like this fluid movement where receptor sites can shift around and they're free flowing. And then we have the great little like docking for those communication signals into that receptor site. Then it creates a signal, and then everything gets processed and metabolites get cleared from the body, and it all starts again. That's beautiful function. Those toxins can clog those receptor sites. And we know that we are electrical beings. Every single thing in our system is constantly sending and conducting electricity. That's how the brain and the neurons are sending information signals. So EMFs coming in as some sort of electrical disruption creates a response where those communication signals and the receptor sites are not able to be present and ready for the type of docking, ready for the signals to respond within the function of that cell. And the EMFs amplify this effect of the process because we have within our cells microtubule resonance, like frequency resonance. And this is how all of the little organelles that are inside the cells are able to function. Like they're supposed to do their job in this beautiful little biomechanical and biochemical format. And they're working together to communicate with all of the other cells in your body, with the other organ systems, and do their function. And they aren't able to perform their function adequately or properly whenever there is a change and alteration to their normal like frequency, their
like
normal resonance
communication
that they should be at.
basically. So it's
Yes.
like they're speaking a different dialect.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because I mean, that was always an argument that people would have, is that, EMFs have been around forever. We have EMF, the earth has EMF. But then when you start kind of unlocking that, okay, well, earth, I can't remember the exact frequencies, like 7 point something, right?
Yeah.
7 point something hertz is kind of like the earth's resonance. And and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're supposed to kind of get to that place when we're
Yes.
sleeping and resting and restoring.
Right.
But how do we get to that place when there are, we have our Wi-Fi plugged in and we have all of our smart devices and our phones right by our head, and those, the frequencies being emitted from those devices are thousands of times different than the frequencies that we are trying to get to and rest and restore. So I always say, like, even if you are not thinking about EMF every day, all day, like now I am, think about it when you're sleeping. Like, put your phone in another room, unplug your Wi-Fi at night, pull your bed out a little bit from the wall, whatever it is you can do.
That's good. I love
But
it.
yeah, I'm like, I feel like that's the phase one.
Yes. Yes,
Phase
it is.
one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so beautiful because whenever you are able to reduce that scatter and reduce like those disrupting types of electrical frequencies that are man-made, like they're created by us, not realizing we're trying to amplify communication in different ways with these radio type frequencies, and just the scatter that happens as a byproduct of all of these different electrical circuit boards and everything else that's getting created, and just the way that we have it where it's being plugged into certain ways of, now we have Bluetooth and these communication signals across this, and we don't have like a grounding effect and a structuring for that, then that creates so much scatter. And we just think about it from the standpoint of our cells are truly phenomenal in how they function. And if we could zoom in to see what actually happens on a microcellular level with all of this disrupting scatter, and to see and appreciate how important it is for just one function of the body to happen, there is such a huge amount of coordination that has to occur from so many different cells, so many different systems. And so we absolutely need to lean into whatever it takes to allow this communication to happen properly and try everything that we can to stop blocking it and
Yeah.
stop disrupting that communication.
So, what do you do when someone comes in and their bucket is full?
Mm. Start with drainage,
Okay.
always. So that means we get toxins out of our system with sweat, urination, defecation, bowel movements. And so we always optimize those things first and foremost. And we go ahead and start reducing where in their immediate environment the toxins are coming from. And that's taking away the environmental toxins from their home, creating their home as a sanctuary again, so that it's that safe space for their nervous system to be back in regeneration, optimal function, and healing mode. And then we also start looking at what do we need to do to clear the biotoxins. And it is very important that it's done in the right manner, in the right
Right.
process, and not done in a consecutive way where it's overwhelming to the body. So I think that we always need to start with just working on the gut first, healing and sealing gut blood barrier, making sure that lung blood barrier is also sealed. So also working on breath work and optimization of that and clearing whatever stagnant, air is there in the lungs. And we work on blood brain barrier, start sealing up the brain, making sure we're protecting it before we ever mobilize any type of toxins. And throughout that process, we have barriers in many ways. We want to work on the mucosal barrier within the sinuses. Of course, that's one of our first defenses against toxic mold that could be in the air or other types of environmental toxins that we're breathing in. And once those barriers are all sealed and we're ready, then we have our defense systems up. Then we can go ahead and start making sure that we're balancing like microbiome. Of course, those are the first microbiome and biotoxin types of balancing that we want to do, because your microbiome actually has a huge amount of support for immune system and also helps to protect against other types of biotoxins. And so we'd regulate that, start clearing a little bit of the fungal, maybe some candida if there's some underlying, and that also starts allowing the body to have more fuel for immune system and more fuel for the rest of the systems of the body, the organ systems, to actually optimize their functioning. And then parasites are a big part of what I clear too, because parasites can have lay a biofilm. The biofilm can actually harbor many different types of environmental toxins
Mm.
and mold behind that biofilm. And so we want to start clearing out those parasites carefully, gently, making sure that the immune system is prepped and ready for it, and always having a binder handy and ready to bind up whatever it is that we just kicked up, whether it was heavy metals that came out of that biofilm or microplastics, forever chemicals, or mold toxins. We want to make sure that the body's ready to just purge that out as quickly as possible and don't let it just circulate anywhere else in the system. And then mold comes after that. And I have learned throughout my years of practice that we need to make sure that we set the immune system's defense systems up first for mold
Yeah, I love
before we
that.
really push it.
I
And
love what you
Lyme
just
would be
said about
last.
the like barriers, like cuz I haven't really thought about that. Like
Yeah.
you know, I've talked to some researchers who've talked about the blood brain barrier and EMFs kind of playing a role in that, and I'm
Mhm.
sure other toxins as well. But yeah, you wouldn't want to start ruffling all these
Yes.
toxins up when all of these barriers that are supposed to protect from toxins getting in are open,
Yes.
because then you're just moving them into new places,
Absolutely.
basically more vulnerable places. So a silly question kind of, but why, like, okay, so if if the toxins are um at rest, I
Mm-hmm.
guess you'd say, like if they're in the film or whatever, what
Yes.
is it still doing to your body, or is it just at rest?
Mm. I love it. Well, if you have a toxic burden bucket where you haven't met the threshold yet, where you have symptoms, great. You may have, like, if you want to picture it, like you have 12 inches in this toxic burden bucket, you may have 11.2 filled. Awesome. Great for you. You still have that much of
Yeah.
that inch left.
Yeah.
Awesome. And just let it sit around until you go across the threshold. And that's perfectly fine. Many people choose to do that. And I definitely support free will. I think everyone just can eat all the Oreos and everything else that they want to, you know, do the heavy metals and such. That works.
Yeah.
Where I believe we have a great opportunity to set ourselves up for success is while we're relatively healthy, before we need to chase down wellness or like chase health to get back to wellness. I think that we can make sure that our system is set up for success and optimized in that wellness, like optimized in its function. And so I think there are many opportunities to just add a few things in while still living life to the absolute fullest. I don't think we need to take away everything that we enjoy. I think there's just ways that we could say, okay, what are some of the worst toxins out there? And how do I minimize that? And if they're at rest inside your body, great. How bad are those toxins sitting around in your body? And do you really want to wait until your system goes through that stressful event, that stressful circumstance that reduces the adrenal response? And then we're like stuck in this fight or flight or freeze mode, this sympathetic overdrive. And as soon as that happens, our resilience drops down. And now that bucket that might have had that like little bit of an inch left, now it just got reduced. And of course, now the threshold to cascade has been hit. And that's my practice is the
Yeah.
most complex cases, the mystery
Woo!
illness cases that other doctors can't treat. They send them my way because they can figure out the solutions for them. And I love getting those patients in whenever they say, look, I'm just here to optimize my wellness because I don't want to get to that place where I saw my mother go through this, or I saw how my friend, all of a sudden developed all these autoimmunities out of the blue where she was perfectly fine before. And then that one thing happened or that one exposure happened. She ended up moving into that place with mold, or she ended up going and like starting a new job. And now she's affected by all the EMFs
Yeah.
that were around her. She never even had a problem before that. Let's not wait until that happens. Let's
It is
harness this
wild. Like,
opportunity now.
you'll have people who like start getting cystic acne at like
Yeah.
30, and they're like, I never
Mhm.
had a problem as a kid. And it's like,
Right.
okay, well, and you're like, I've been eating all the foods I'm eating now forever, so I must not have an allergy to any of them. I go through the same stuff
I love it.
sometimes where I'm like, oh, wait, maybe this has been a problem all along,
Yeah.
but you've just had
Your
enough
system
of
just
that.
had more resilience. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, like what you were saying about the toxicities kind of getting stuck and then
Yes.
blocking the communications and like
Yes.
blocking or like restricting the fascia from being
Hmm.
able to move things to the
Right.
lymphatics or whatever.
Hmm.
I might be botching this recap, um
It's a good
but
recap.
it makes so much sense. Like it makes so
Yes.
much more sense than, because it's so easy to be like, oh, well, if it's settled,
Hmm.
then we shouldn't mess with it. Because you know what I mean? Like it's there,
Hmm.
it's settled, but it's like,
Right.
yeah, but the more toxicities that you have just settling in
Yes.
different areas of the body, the less your body is going to be able to push through those
Hmm.
blockages and have communication with other.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yep, that's great. Now, where that argument, I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with it, is because I think that people should be very careful when they
Right.
start detoxing certain things, especially heavy metals. And even whenever they start going after molds and start trying to mount an immune response against certain types of toxins, for sure, Lyme is one of those really complex disorders to clear. Then I would say if you don't have an amazing functional practitioner that's guiding you and supporting you, don't do it. Just leave it alone because I do see issues where certain people will try protocols and it's not well guided and it's not in the right sequence and it's not with the specific binders. There are so many different types of binders out there. We need to make sure that we're introducing them in the right sequence so that exactly at the time that we just now kicked up this other type of toxin, we're binding and pulling out. We don't want it to recirculate. So I wholeheartedly
Yeah.
agree.
No,
If
totally.
you're not sure what you're doing out there,
Yeah.
make
Just
sure that
pause.
you find somebody who can guide you.
Yeah. I love that so much. So, okay, with that, where are you located?
In Dallas, Texas.
Oh my gosh. What? I was like, I hope she's local to me. And you are. I mean, kind of.
Oh,
I'm in Waco.
oh, wow. Yeah, that's right
Yeah.
down the road.
That's amazing. Okay, well, if you live in Texas, you
I
have
love
sound
it.
of functional medicine. Um, Oh, I completely lost my train of thoughts because now I'm so excited about that. But yeah, so okay, that was my question. Do you do testing
Yes.
like all
Mhm.
throughout, or do you have like the same sequence that you go through with everyone?
Yes, definitely do testing. We need to know what it is that we're clearing. I also want to know which types of heavy metals, if there are any, that I can make sure that we are binding for significantly longer periods of time. Like, for example, if there's aluminum or mercury, some of these other really big types of heavy metals, yes, that needs to be a longer process and a much slower process. And we also need to make sure we get to the source. Like, is it in the dental work? Is it in, like, where was this exposure happening? So testing guides me on that. Like environmental toxins we need to know about, like microplastics, glyphosates, those kinds of things. I also love epigenetic testing because I can create super personalized and tailored approaches to exactly how our detox pathways may be a little more deficient on certain things. And it's so helpful for us to know for our wellness plan. Like once we've cleared everything and shifted somebody to optimal wellness, how do we maintain it? And epigenetics can guide us there
Okay,
with biotoxins for sure. Yeah, tell me, what's
explain
your
a little
question?
bit about epigenetics because I understand
Yeah.
it on a basic level, but I feel like we should,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, I love that. Yes, epigenetics. So, in a nutshell, I like to just describe it as we have genes that have a couple of different copies, and we can have either like a wild type, recessive type, we can have just certain expressions of these. What this means is, in layman's terms, you can think of it as like a dimmer light switch, and either it's all the way up, full brightness on, or it's dimmed all the way down, you can hardly even see the light. And so, that for certain types of genetics, like each different gene codes for something in the system. It's coding for a function of like how well do you process pesticides? Certain people that have high glyphosate loads, they really need to be on organic vegetables and they need to be careful about where they eat toxins and how they consume it and where they live. Make sure they're not living on a golf course if they have those epigenetic factors, because those are
That's
the really
brutal.
intense cancer cases that I see. So we want to make sure that we understand those epigenetics and it codes for everything as far as like how you work out, what's your best type of
I
style
love
of
it.
eating, like what types of nutrition are you potentially always going to be deficient in? Or is there a level of interactive movement or such that you just need as a basal metabolic level, because we might have certain levels of adipogenesis that codes in our genes and it just helps us to maintain higher mitochondrial load. As long as we know exactly what types of organs and systems we're optimizing with epigenetic expression, then we could guide and tailor that with lifestyle approaches, nutritional approaches, supplements, things like that. And then we've listened to what the cells are needing for optimal function. So I love being able to go to that core foundation because rather than it's just pushing the immune system with these certain supplements like propolis or echinacea or golden silver, zinc, or whatever most people think of for pushing the immune system, let's figure out what it is that would actually optimize the cells that create your immune system and create the differentiation of the immune system, and then optimize that just from a microcellular approach, from an epigenetic expression approach. And
That's
that's
amazing.
true wellness
Yeah.
whenever you get to
You're a
that level.
true functional medicine doctor. Like true,
Thank
true.
you.
You know, like we have different levels of functional medicine doctors out there. Um, they're hard to
Thank
find,
you.
but I love like I'm listening to you talk. I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to schedule appointments. I hope you have
Oh,
openings.
of
Um,
course.
so really quick before we end this
Yes.
episode, because I know
Hmm.
like we say, okay, just don't try to just detox without any
Right.
support, without any help. But if someone is
Yes.
experiencing sensitivity to EMF, they're experiencing brain fog, they're experiencing these like, symptoms, what is some low hanging fruit until they can get that care that they need? What are a couple things that they could do that isn't
Hmm.
like heavy detox, but
Yeah.
can keep them
Yeah.
at
I love
bay
it.
until they, yeah.
Definitely. Well, I think it's
Because
so
I don't want to
important.
tell people just keep eating your Oreos, No, no, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, as a foundation, we can just go ahead and start supporting our system with clearing that toxic burden bucket just by poking more holes in that toxic burden bucket. Like help it drain, help it get some of those toxins out, help your own system be set up for success with that because it's always trying to protect you by moving and mobilizing and getting these toxins released. So optimize the lymphatic system. And we can think about like rebounding and dry brushing and gua sha and like you can do, there's so many different things like cold showers. Vagus nerve stimulation also helps that. And whenever you're working on the lymphatic system, that's mobilizing potentially a few toxins. So you want to be very careful about that and only do a certain low level.
Okay.
And then the drainage pathways are back to this course. So we have the lymphatics that then can help you sweat. If you're not sweating, that's a huge problem because anhidrosis or lack of sweat means that you're not using those glands, those sweat glands, to clear toxins, and it's just getting built up and harbored. And
Mm.
especially around the axillary lymph nodes, that's next to breast tissue for females, and then even for males, that's next to heart and lungs as well. So there's a lot of complexities there. So we need to make sure we're sweating to get things out. So even just getting out in the sunshine and the
Yeah.
heat of summertime, that's perfect amount of just a little bit of that warmth and heat. If it's in wintertime, take an Epsom salt bath if your body can handle that. And you can, of course, change the temperature. If you can't go all the way up to a hotter level where you're actually sweating in the bath, then take something that's a comfortable bath that's nice and relaxing. It puts you into parasympathetic mode. So your body is already in that right rest, digest, and start healing
Yeah.
and really reducing the toxic burden because it also helps with the detoxification when you're in that peaceful state. Your body's ready with those defense systems. And the other drainage pathways are, of course, making sure you're drinking plenty of water because the kidneys getting backed up, if they're dehydrated, they're not going to flush toxins. The toxins become sluggish. The serum in the system, the extracellular matrix, all the fluid that's supposed to be flushing out those toxins, it's stagnant. It's dehydrated.
Yeah.
So drink half your body weight in ounces of water every single day at a minimum, and that's every single person on the face of this planet. So absolutely do that.
I am so guilty.
Super important. We have to, because if we're below that, then we definitely have built up toxins for that day. When you're dehydrated, you've built up those toxins. And then bowel movements. At least one bowel movement, great, healthy, cleared bowel movement every single day. Ideally, it's more like 2 or 3, depending on how many meals you've eaten. Ideally, you should be having a bowel movement of whatever that was that you just ate and broke down within 6 to 8 hours. And so ideally, your system is just able to break down, assimilate the nutrients, and then also clear those toxins and whatever else it's ready to clear within that time. If it's not clearing that, whatever it was that you ate within 24 hours, we've got a major problem. And that's where we start, first of all, before any lymphatics, before we work on sweating, before we start doing baths or even saunas or anything else, we have to make sure that the number one drainage pathway of bowel movements is open and clearing, and kidneys next for the water.
I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah,
You're
I have
so
resources on all
lovely.
this. And
Yes.
so if anyone wants to, it's on my website, free resources. Go there, download these documents. I try to put as much information there as possible because I think that it shouldn't be difficult to find your way to the right types of information and just something that you can do on your own, that you can support yourself with, and don't let yourself get to the place that you have health concerns
Yeah.
to then chase down health and find a practitioner to work with you. And then you're going on this long health journey, just trying to reclaim your wellness. Like, you deserve to keep living the life of your dreams. So let's
I
not let
love
something
that.
throw us off that.
We've really had a big wake up call in our family on that because we've had some stuff go on with my in-laws medically and stuff. And we've our family, like our little family, we have a 5-year-old and 3-year-old, and me and my husband, we were just like, okay, like we have to make the choice that we are
Yes.
going to completely pivot and not like awaken these genes that we,
Yes. That's right.
yeah, it's like a really big
exactly.
conversation. So we've been really looking, for the right path on that. So I
Yes.
personally appreciate this conversation.
Oh, good.
Okay, where can people connect with you? What's your website? What's your social? All of that.
drleiladoolittle.com. And
I love it.
it's Dr. Leila Doolittle across all social accounts, and that's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn,
It's
all those things.
Leila. And if you
Yep.
want to get the show notes from this episode, and also we'll link your website in there as well so they can get the
Perfect.
resources, it's
That sounds good.
wave.ariestech.com.
Excellent.
Thank you
This
so
is
much. I
wonderful.
really, really appreciated this conversation.
I
And I'll see you
enjoyed it
soon because
immensely.
I'm
I
coming.
look forward to that. Yay. Can't wait to take care of you and your beautiful family.
Bye.
See you later.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and check out the show notes at wave.ariestech.com.